Well, new details tonight regarding the 2023 death of an inmate inside the York County Prison. An investigative grand jury report released today lays out a series of failures leading up to the death of 39-year-old Haywood Dixon Jr. Fox 43's Sydney Dahlman joining us now with details of what happened and what comes next for the prison.
Yeah, Evan, York County District Attorney Tim Barker walked through the heavily redacted grand jury report detailing the hours leading up to Dixon's death. The briefing lasted more than 2 hours, and Barker says there are still hundreds of pages of information that weren't discussed publicly. What the report does reveal, though, is a chaotic response with breakdowns in communication, authority, and missed medical care. When 39-year-old Haywood Dixon Jr. was booked into York County Prison, he was suffering from diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity. That was July 4th, 2023. And just 3 days later, Dixon was pronounced dead in his cell. York County District Attorney Tim Barker says his death was preventable.
If medical treatment had been provided earlier at the point in time of the taser and the ERC usage, that would have increased the opportunity for survival. And with prompt care, Mr. Dixon's condition was survivable.
A report from the case's investigating grand jury shows the day before his death, Dixon complained of shortness of breath, chest pains, and dizziness. However, he refused to comply with the prison's medical check-in procedures or sign a treatment refusal. Corrections officers then transported Dixon to a medical evaluation cell without having received medical attention, one of the first failures in care.
Nurse number 1 did not leave medical to attend to Mr. Dixon at the request of Sergeant number 1.
Over the next 3 to 4 hours, the grand jury found his medical care was delayed and inconsistent, despite his symptoms continuing to worsen.
Nurse number 1 advises Sergeant number 1 that Mr. Dixon was an a-hole and that the incoming third shift RN could take care of Dixon.
During that time, the report states a strip search was ordered, and Dixon said he could not comply because he did not feel well and could not bend over to remove his shoes. Officers called in the prison's Special Operations Response Team, known as SORT. The grand jury found no meaningful de-escalation efforts were attempted before force was used, and Dixon was tased, then placed into an emergency restraint chair. Barker classified the taser usage as excessive force, as the officer failed to follow correct procedure before deploying the weapon. Despite Dixon's treatment by prison staff, Barker says the case does not satisfy all requirements to charge the staff with involuntary manslaughter.
Even though there may have been causation met, there was not the mental intent that could be met.
However, Barker says the case does fall under criminally negligent homicide.
That is not something our jurisdiction has and is not for consideration.
The grand jury issued 12 recommendations, calling for changes to use of force practices, better training for officers and medical staff, a clear chain of command, and limits on special response teams, with de-escalation required first. The report also urges state lawmakers to create a criminally negligent homicide statute to prevent deaths like Dixon's. Former State Corrections Secretary John Wetzel says that's why the grand jury's work matters.
I think it's really critical to really rally around, pull a community together and figure out what we as a community deserve. What do we demand from our system?
Barker says 2 nurses have since been separated from employment and others have been required to complete additional training. The Dixon family is pursuing civil action.
So, Sydney, this happened, about 2.5, 3 years ago. Has there been any progress in the prison's procedure since then?
Well, the district attorney says the prison has already started addressing many of the recommendations given by the grand jury prior to this report being released, since it did take them nearly 2 years to complete, and also thanks to a change in management. However, there is still a lot of work to be done.
Fox 43's Sydney Dahlman joining us. Sydney, thank you so much.